So with the recent release of Resident Evil Death Island, the 5th installment of the Resident Evil animated series, it's time to rank all 5 Resident Evil CG projects from the worst to the best. Now before we begin, I just want to say this isn't the right list, it's just my list. If your ranking's different from mine, which it likely will, feel free to share it in the comments below. Is Death Island now your favorite? Is it still Damnation? Or is it one of the others? I would like to know. Without further ado though, let's get into the ranking. In last place is Resident Evil Infinite Darkness. Unlike the rest on this list, which are all movies, Infinite Darkness is actually a 4-episode TV show, but more importantly, it's essentially an inferior rehash of Resident Evil Degenerations, being a political thriller featuring a somewhat sympathetic villain trying to expose a bioweapon conspiracy within the US government, which is an intriguing enough story. As a federal agent himself, our main protagonist Leon is in a difficult position where he has to either trust this person and commit treason or stop him from potentially uncovering an unlawful government scheme. It's a very gray situation, but how our antagonist Jason is written makes the line between right and wrong frustratingly clear. The story tells us that we should sympathize with this character to a degree, but his actions make it very hard to. Almost everything he does throughout the series directly contradicts his goal and simply doesn't make sense. Whether that's him trying to destroy the very evidence to prove the conspiracy he desires to expose, or killing his friend who had the same end goal as him but sparing Leon who's never been on his side. His illogical actions depletes any complexity he has as a sympathetic villain, and usually I can look past sloppy writing in a Resident Evil project when it provides some fun action, but this show doesn't deliver on that either. There are thrilling sequences to be found in the series, but they're very few and far between. And of course, I have to bring up Infinite Darkness's most shameful act of completely butchering Claire's character by making her a helpless damsel in distress when she's known to be a strong female protagonist who can kick some ass. Absolutely disgraceful. Now I will say Infinite Darkness probably has the best animation, being one of the more recent entries within the Resident Evil animated series, but that's about all it's got going for. It's a good looking show, but not really a good nor entertaining one. Coming in at number 4 is Resident Evil Degeneration. To me, Degeneration is a superior iteration of Infinite Darkness's story dealing with the government conspiracy that's actually linked to Raccoon City, which we all know is the most consequential event in Resident Evil. As a result, the story shares more connective tissue with the Resident Evil world as a whole, and it's also more competently written. No logic is thrown out the window to a severe degree here. Funny enough, I actually think Degeneration is like a mirror opposite to Infinite Darkness. Wherever it falters, Infinite Darkness excels, vice versa. For example, while Leon is still the action hero man here, he lacks the cheeky personality that we all love him for. His character is very wooden and flat in Degeneration, while Claire's personality and strong will are on full display. Being the oldest entry of the series, Degeneration also has the least visually appealing CG animation, but these aren't very detrimental to the overall experience. Its strengths definitely outweigh the strengths of Infinite Darkness. However, this is still overall a very mild film for me. It's adequately entertaining with its action and exceptional narrative, but overall a pretty forgettable flick that I'm not really going to be thinking about when the following movies on this list exist. In third place is Resident Evil Vendetta. Now this is where I have to disclaim that my ranking is heavily influenced by how much I would rewatch the movie despite its flaws. This entry has quite a meaty cast featuring Chris, Leon, and Rebecca as the main protagonists, and that by default makes this a very fun movie to watch as a Resident Evil fan. It also starts off quite promising with an atmospheric opening set in a creepy mansion. It initially presents a good balance of horror and gripping action, but as the movie progresses, you eventually realize how ridiculously dumb its plot is. The main villain's goal of unleashing a deadly virus onto the world as an act of vengeance, while also abducting Rebecca with the intention to marry her because she looks like his deceased wife, is downright goofy. This movie may have the worst writing. Like, the story completely jumped off a cliff for me by the second half, but unlike Infinite Darkness, Vendetta does deliver on the action. In fact, this movie has the most over-the-top but electrifying action sequences out of all the CG films, and I love it. I don't care what anyone says. It certainly has the "it's so bad it's good" energy. No. This movie does not care about story or characterization whatsoever. It gives Rebecca the Claire treatment in Infinite Darkness, it makes Leon a depressed alcoholic that literally gets innocent people killed, and it is gloriously stupid, but hilarious. This is not a good movie by any means, but one that I find to be very enjoyable due to it being a Chris and Leon team-up movie with John Wick-inspired action. Our runner-up is Resident Evil Damnation. This movie has slightly a different formula, being kind of a fish-out-of-water story as Leon infiltrates a small Eastern European country to verify rumors that bioorganic weapons are being used in their civil war. Leon has no interest in the foreign country's conflict, but finds himself eventually taking part in the battlefield alongside a few freedom fighters to fight BOWs, and the new characters are quite memorable here, creating some great dynamics throughout the film, providing some great laughs inside of it that has a lot of emotional resonance in a way that's different for this franchise. This movie really felt like it wanted to be a sci-fi action thriller with some powerful emotional arcs for the characters. The action, while not as heightened as Vendetta, is still very thrilling. Leon faces a variety of BOWs, including the Ganados from Resident Evil 4, tyrants, and of course, the iconic Lickers. During the first half of the movie, they pose a formidable threat for our protagonist, but your perception of them may change going into the back half once a character gains the ability to mind control them. The Lickers eventually fight alongside our heroes against bigger threats that are the tyrants and even sacrifice themselves for them at times. Having the audience feel a little bit of sympathy for them when all they've been are these feared, ruthless mutants throughout the history of this franchise is an interesting element in this movie that I did enjoy as well.
I didn't expect to be saved by BOWs.
Overall, this is a genuinely solid Resident Evil movie. It has the highest Rotten Tomato score out of all these films. It's the one that even receives a lot of praise from audiences, and I did think that this was the best Resident Evil CG film for a really long time. Until the release of Resident Evil Death Island. By far the most eventful entry in the series, bringing together the legacy characters for one big Avengers-style team-up. This is an adventure that has heart, humor, great action sequences, tons of fan service, and it's just fun seeing all these iconic Resident Evil heroes interacting with one another. But the thing that elevates the movie is the villain, Dylan Blake. The film takes the time to establish his tragic backstory that actually kinda makes him sympathetic, and he also interestingly mirrors our main protagonist Jill, who's going through some trauma herself, which is more than what we've gotten from any other human villain in the series. There have been many attempts in crafting a sympathetic antagonist in the previous movies, but for me, Dylan is the most understandable and compelling one. I didn't say this in my review video for this film, but having rewatched all these movies for this ranking, Death Island also has the best pacing. There's a lot of setup in the beginning, but like I said, it's fun following this all-star cast, and once they all get to Alcatraz Island, the movie pushes the pedal to the metal and does not let up until it's over. In the end, Resident Evil Death Island consists of pretty much everything I could ask for from a big Resident Evil crossover. It's certainly the one that I'd rewatched the most times out of all these movies, and for that, it comes in at number 1. Remember to share your ranking in the comments below. I know where I place Degeneration and Vendetta is a bit controversial. That's where you guys come in. Let's respectfully share how we would put these movies in order, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Later.